Actually, Tantra is one of those words that's been around for a long time in India, especially, and then it's migrated elsewhere, especially to Tibet. And so people use it in a variety of ways. To streamline my response right now, I'll say that the definition that I feel is the most illuminating is from Tibetan Buddhism. And a key term uh, for the Tibetan Buddhist understanding of Tantra is that it's the path of transformation. And what that means is, unlike, say, on the path of renunciation, where you might look at a desire and say, okay, this is an obstruction, it comes out of dualism. If I engage in desires, I'm caught up in samsara, and that leads to suffering. So I want to renounce desires. I'm going to, in the crudest form, I'm going to kind of repress them, ignore them, judge them, condemn them. In a more refined form, I'm just kind of having equanimity and letting them go. But in neither case are we seeing the potential of that desire as like a fuel that we can harness to fuel our awakening, to transform it into enlightenment itself. The desire does need to change because in its normal form, it's not an expression of wisdom, but it has an energy and characteristics to it that if we redirect that energy and harness it and transform it, it actually will make our enlightenment more profound. So why miss that opportunity? Why just sort of let it go and say, not this, not this, I throw all this away. The tantric spirit is one of kind of embodying life, being deeply in your body, being in your human nature. You don't want to fall back into identification. That's why it's considered a tricky path, is that it's riding that kind of thin line between falling back into identification, or on the other extreme, pushing it away. We want to be in this balanced place of relationship where, once having established equanimity and real clarity and some wisdom, then we can engage those energies and harness them and sort of integrate them into our own enlightened state. And it's thought in many tantric traditions that actually leads to a richer kind of enlightenment to do that, because the kind of leaning towards more equanimity, just pure equanimity is a very important quality, but if it's the main emphasis, it's kind of a cooler, less rich kind of enlightenment. This is a sort of warmer, bigger, richer kind of enlightenment. So that's the basic idea. There's a lot more. Like, an aspect of that is the spirit of marriage, where instead of kind of letting go of this and letting go of this, you can transform Shiva and Shakti, or mind and body, or spirit and matter, or the different kinds of polarities. They can be harnessed, integrated, and in fact, because in that transformation, opposites tend to integrate and marry. So that's another way. So it's not uncommon for him to say the Kundalini aspect of Tantra, it's seen as the marriage of solar and lunar energies that fuel that awakening, and then the Kundalini is a transformative fire that transforms us into. Now, you can use Kundalini in the old style renunciate way and just think of it as burning stuff off, but in the tantric context, it's more of a transformative fire. It's inclusive and liberating. So that's a fairly quick, efficient definition of Tantra. I think if you go back in that context and look at other traditions that maybe don't exactly define it that way, the practices often still reflect that attitude, even if they don't have that inner core of meaning. So a lot of the Hindu practices that are tantric also embody that same spirit to a large extent. Although we sometimes don't see pure forms of Tantra, they still kind of dabble in the renunciate terminology or things like that. But generally, I think most truly tantric teachings, they are heavily centered in that view. And then other schools of thought that aren't don't use that terminology, like, say, Taoism, also can be very tantric in their style.